The coffee had gone lukewarm before I even took my first sip. That happened a lot lately. The morning slipped by too quietly in this house since Tom died. The clock over the sink ticked in slow, steady beats, too steady, too loud. Outside, the November wind rattled the last brown leaves against the kitchen window. I pulled my cardigan tighter, half watching the sunlight dance over the counter, half listening to the silence that filled the spaces where voices used to be. Then my phone buzzed. Ethan. My heart jumped before I could stop it. My son's name had become a rare visitor on my screen. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and answered quickly, trying to sound casual, not desperate. Ethan. Honey, how are you? There was that tiny pause. He always paused like he needed to remember how to talk to me. I'm good, Mom. Listen, I wanted to tell you something. I smiled automatically, clutching the phone tighter. Something good, I hope. Oh, is it about that girl you mentioned last time, Lily, right? Silence again. Then he said lightly, yeah, actually, we got married yesterday. For a moment I thought I'd misheard. Married? I repeated. Yesterday. Yeah, it was kind of spur of the moment, he said quickly. Just us at the courthouse. Nothing fancy. The refrigerator hummed behind me. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Oh, I said. My voice sounded thin even to me. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Congratulations. Thanks, Mom, he said, relief in his tone. Relief that I wasn't angry, maybe. I'll send pictures later, okay? I've got to run to work. Of course, I said softly. Take care of yourself, Ethan. Give my love to Lily. He said, will do. And then the line clicked dead. For a long time I didn't move. The mug of coffee sat cooling on the table, a curl of steam fading away. He got married yesterday. I should have been there. I should have helped pick out flowers, baked a cake, pinned a boutonniere to his jacket. I should have been sitting in the front row, crying happy tears, not standing here in my empty kitchen, clutching a silent phone. The clock on the wall ticked again. I hated that sound suddenly. It felt like the world reminding me I was too late for something that had already passed. When Tom died, Ethan was 24. He cried once at the funeral, and then he packed his bags for a tech job in Seattle and told me he needed a fresh start. I told him I understood. But what I really understood was how it felt to be left behind. I told myself not to cling. Let him live, let him fly, isn't that what mothers are supposed to do? But now the silence in this house felt like punishment for being too patient. That night I tried to read. I tried to watch television. I even tried to sleep. But every time the clock ticked toward midnight, I found myself staring at Ethan's graduation photo on the mantel. In it, he's smiling wide, cap crooked, one arm slung around Tom's shoulders. Tom's eyes are shining, he was so proud that day. Can you believe it? He'd whispered to me then. Our boy's growing up. I smiled at the memory, but it cut deep. Now he was grown, married even, and somehow I hadn't been part of it. At 3 a.m, I finally gave up on sleep. I padded to the kitchen, brewed tea, and sat at the table staring into nothing. I pulled out the old photo album. Ethan in his Halloween pirate costume. Ethan learning to ride his bike. Ethan building snowmen with Tom. Page after page of moments that had felt endless at the time. Now they looked like snapshots from another lifetime. Where did it all go? I whispered to the empty room. The clock didn't answer, but it kept ticking. The days after Ethan's call stretched long and slow. I tried to fill them with noise, the television running in the background, the radio humming old country songs Tom used to whistle along to, but nothing drowned out the ache. The silence in this house had changed. It wasn't the quiet of peace anymore. It was the quiet of absence. Sometimes I'd find myself setting the table for two before remembering I only needed one plate. Other times I'd walk past the hallway mirror and catch my reflection. Tired eyes, silver hair, a sweater that hung too loose now, and barely recognize the woman looking back. Ethan had sent a photo 2 days after the call. He and Lily stood in front of a courthouse door. Simple, happy, ordinary. She was in a cream-colored dress, hair loose around her shoulders, her hand tucked into his. They looked radiant. Complete. And yet, when I zoomed in on his smile, I thought I saw something else behind it. A flicker of guilt maybe, or a hesitation. Or maybe I was just seeing what I wanted to see. I saved the picture anyway. Printed it and slipped it into the corner of a frame already filled with family photos. It didn't feel right, not yet. but it felt like a start. Winter settled in heavy that year. Snow blanketed the street, covering the neighborhood in that kind of hush that only exists after a storm. My neighbor Carol came by sometimes to check on me, bringing cookies or church bulletins. She was kind, but her life was full: grandchildren, family dinners, noise. I couldn't blame her for not understanding the silence that came with living alone too long. Then one Thursday afternoon, as I was sweeping the porch, my phone buzzed again. Ethan. My hand shook slightly as I answered. "Hey, sweetheart." "Hey, Mom," he said. "So Lily and I were talking, and we'd like to come visit next month. Maybe spend a weekend with you if that's okay." For a second I couldn't speak. I blinked back tears and tried to keep my voice steady. "Oh, you don't have to come all this way just for me." "We want to," he said gently. "Lily's been wanting to meet you properly. She's nervous, actually." That made me laugh a little. "She doesn't need to be nervous. I'm harmless." He chuckled, and the sound of it, light, unguarded, filled something hollow inside me. "We'll send you our flight details soon," he said. "Love you, Mom." "Love you too," I whispered, but the call had already ended. That night I didn't sleep much, but it wasn't from sadness this time. I walked through every room, imagining what they'd look like to guests. I dusted the photo frames, fluffed the cushions, and even pulled the good china from the cabinet, the set Tom bought for our 10th anniversary. For the first time in a long time, I had a reason to prepare. The following week was a blur of lists and cleaning. I went grocery shopping, baking the old recipes Ethan loved: banana bread, lasagna, the chocolate chip cookies he used to steal while they were still warm. I caught myself humming while I cooked. It startled me, I hadn't done that in years. Carol noticed it too. "You're glowing lately, Margaret," she said when she stopped by. "Something special happening?" I smiled, pretending to keep it casual. "My boy's coming home." The morning of their visit, I was up before sunrise. The air felt electric, alive. I set the kettle on, checked the oven twice, and rearranged the dining table 3 times before finally sitting down. When I heard tires crunching on the driveway, my heart pounded so hard I had to take a deep breath before opening the door. And there he was. Ethan, taller, older, hair a little thinner at the temples, but still my boy. And next to him, holding a small bouquet of tulips, was Lily. "Hi, Mrs. Harper," she said softly, her smile bright but nervous. "It's so good to finally meet you." I hesitated just for a second, and then I took her hands in mine. They were warm, a little cold from the air, but genuine. "Please," I said. "Call me Margaret." Ethan leaned in and hugged me. It was quick, maybe too quick, but I held on to him anyway, memorizing the way he smelled, the weight of him in my arms. For a moment I thought I might cry, but I didn't. Not yet. Inside, Lily gasped at the table. "You cooked all this?" I laughed, brushing it off. "Just a little something. Ethan always had an appetite." Ethan grinned. "Still do." And for the first time in years, the house felt full again. Laughter bouncing off the walls, dishes clinking, warmth radiating from more than just the oven. But under the joy, there was still that quiet question whispering inside me. Why didn't he want me there? When dinner was done and Lily offered to do the dishes, Ethan and I sat in the living room. He stared at the framed photo of his wedding on the shelf. "You printed it," he said softly. "Of course I did," I said. "You're my son. It's part of our story now." He nodded, eyes glancing down. "Mom," he began, then paused. "I should have told you about the wedding." My heart tightened, but I kept my voice calm. "Why didn't you?" He sighed. "I don't know. I think I was afraid it would make you sad. Or that you'd feel like I was replacing Dad somehow." That hit me harder than I expected. "Sweetheart," I whispered. "Your father would have been so proud. He'd want you to live your life, to love. I just wish I could have been there to see it." Ethan looked up then, his eyes glistening. "I'm sorry, Mom. I really am." I reached over and took his hand, squeezing gently. "You're here now. That's what matters." He nodded, and when he smiled again, it was real. That night, after they left for their hotel, I stood in the doorway watching their car lights fade into the darkness. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I'd been left behind. I felt seen. And I whispered into the quiet, "Welcome home, Ethan." I woke early the next morning, long before the sun had found its way through the curtains. For a moment I forgot they were here, Ethan and Lily, sleeping at the hotel downtown. Then it hit me like a soft, happy ache. My boy is home. The house still smelled faintly of last night's dinner, of cinnamon and bread and laughter. I made coffee and sat by the window the same way I did every morning since Tom died. But this time the silence felt different. Not lonely, just quiet. I looked out at the garden. The snow from yesterday had melted into silver puddles that reflected the sky. Tom had planted those hydrangeas out there when Ethan was little. He used to tell him, "A garden only grows if you pay attention to it." I used to think he was talking about flowers. Now I think he meant love. When they arrived later that morning, Lily carried a paper bag full of muffins. "Breakfast delivery," she said, smiling. Her voice was bright but not forced. She had one of those gentle energies that fill a room without trying. As we ate, she asked questions about my cooking, my garden, about Ethan's childhood stories. And Ethan rolled his eyes and laughed when I told her about the time he tried to microwave aluminum foil. For the first time I saw something I hadn't noticed before. How happy she made him. There was an ease in his shoulders, a softness in his smile that reminded me of the boy he used to be before the world made him hurry. After breakfast, Lily helped me in the kitchen. She hummed while she washed dishes, a small tune that drifted through the house like sunlight. "You know," I said after a while, "I wasn't sure what to expect." She glanced over, puzzled. "About me?" I smiled. "About this. About what it would feel like, meeting the woman who has my son's heart." Her face softened. "I know it wasn't fair not inviting you. That was mostly my fault." I looked at her, surprised. She nodded slowly. "I told Ethan I didn't want a big wedding. My parents, they're complicated. I just wanted simple. But I didn't realize what it might mean for you." Her voice cracked slightly, and she turned back to the sink. I reached out and touched her arm. "Dear, don't carry that alone. You gave him peace, and that's more than any ceremony could have done." She smiled then, eyes glistening. "He really missed you, you know. He just doesn't know how to say things sometimes." I chuckled softly. "He gets that from his father." Later, while they went out for a walk, I wandered into Tom's old study. Dust had gathered on his books, on the photos lining the shelves. One picture caught my eye. Tom holding Ethan as a baby, both of them laughing, sunlight hitting their faces just right. I sat down in his chair, the leather cold against my hands. "Tom," I whispered into the air, "you'd like her. She's kind." A tear slipped down before I could stop it. "You'd be proud of him too. He's found his way." For a while I just sat there, breathing in the faint smell of old paper and aftershave that never quite left the room. It felt like he was there listening, the way he always did when words came hard for me. That evening we had dinner again, something simple this time. Ethan told stories from Seattle, about their tiny apartment and the rain that never stopped. Lily talked about her students. She was a third-grade teacher, full of patience and sparkle. At one point she said, "We're saving for a house. Something small with a porch and maybe a yard big enough for a dog." I smiled. "Sounds perfect." Ethan glanced at me then, his expression soft. "You'll come visit when we find it, right?" I laughed. "Try and stop me." The three of us talked late into the night, and for the first time in years I didn't feel like an outsider looking in. I felt included. When I finally lay in bed, I stared at the ceiling, listening to the wind. The hurt of the past weeks was still there, but it had changed shape. It wasn't sharp anymore, it was a tender ache, the kind that comes when wounds start to heal. I thought of Tom again. If love was a garden, ours had gone through many winters. But maybe spring was coming back. Quietly, gently, one visit at a time. The house felt too still after they left on Sunday morning. I stood in the doorway waving until their rental car turned the corner, until the sound of tires on gravel faded into nothing but wind. When I closed the door, the quiet came rushing back, but it wasn't empty this time. It was gentle, like the hush after music ends, when you're still humming the tune in your heart. I wandered through the living room, touching the chair where Ethan had sat, the coffee cup Lily had used, the folded blanket she'd straightened before leaving. Little traces of them. Proof that they had been here, that I hadn't just imagined it. On the table lay a small envelope with my name written in Lily's careful handwriting. Inside was a thank you card and a photo. The three of us standing together in front of my house, the snow glittering around us. Someone had written underneath in pen, "Our first family picture." I pressed the photo to my chest and let myself cry, not out of sadness but out of release. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like life was something that had moved on without me. It had simply been waiting for me to open the door. The months that followed were lighter. Ethan called once a week now, sometimes from his car, sometimes from the office, sometimes just to ask about my recipes. Lily sent me little things. Photos of sunsets, voice notes of the children in her class singing. A video of Ethan burning pancakes on a Sunday morning. I printed every picture she sent and taped them to the fridge until it looked like a collage of their lives. Each one felt like a small promise, "We're still here, Mom." One rainy afternoon in May, the phone rang again. "Mom," Ethan said, his voice brighter than I'd heard in a long time. "How do you feel about taking a trip?" "A trip? To Seattle? We want you to come stay for a bit." I almost laughed. "Me traveling again after all these years? You sure you're ready for me invading your space?" Lily's voice chimed in the background. "We're ready." So a few weeks later, there I was standing at an airport gate with trembling hands and a heart full of nerves. The flight felt endless, but when I saw them waiting at the terminal, Ethan waving, Lily holding a handmade sign that said, "Welcome home, Mom," the years between us disappeared. Their apartment was small but full of warmth. The walls were covered in pictures and mismatched frames, books stacked everywhere. The smell of fresh basil from a plant by the window. It didn't feel like just a place they lived in, it felt like a place they belonged. "Sit," Lily said, guiding me to the couch. "We made you dinner." Ethan appeared from the kitchen with a pot of something bubbling and delicious. "Lasagna," he said. "Your recipe." I laughed. "It smells better than mine ever did." After dinner we talked for hours, telling old stories, laughing until our sides hurt. When I finally went to bed in their guest room, I stared at the ceiling, listening to the hum of city rain. I realized I wasn't lonely anymore. I was home, even miles away from my own house. The next evening, as we sat on their small balcony watching the lights shimmer over the water, Lily handed me an envelope. Her hands were shaking. "What's this?" I asked. "Just open it," Ethan said, his eyes shining. Inside was a black and white sonogram photo. For a second I couldn't breathe. Then the tears came, hot and unstoppable. "We wanted you to be the first to know," Lily whispered. "You're going to be a grandmother." I pressed the photo to my lips, trembling. "Oh my, oh my." Ethan wrapped his arms around me, and for a moment I could feel Tom there too. In the wind, in the laughter, in the love that had somehow found its way back after all these years. Later that night, after they'd gone to bed, I stood alone in the living room, looking out at the Seattle skyline. The city lights reflected in the window like stars. A sky I hadn't looked up at in a long time. I whispered, "Tom, can you see this? He's going to be a father." And I swear, for a moment I felt him beside me, that same steady warmth I'd known for 40 years. And I could almost hear him say, "See? You didn't lose him. You were just waiting for the right moment to be found again." When I flew home a week later, I carried that photo in my purse and a heart filled with something I hadn't felt since before the loneliness took hold. Hope. The first thing I did when I got back was take down the picture of their courthouse wedding and replace it with a new one. The three of us together, smiling in the snow. Beside it, I set a small frame with the ultrasound image. Then I whispered, just loud enough for the quiet house to hear, "Better late than never." A year later, the morning sun glows through the same kitchen window in Ohio. A baby's laugh echoes from the living room where Lily sits on the floor with little Tommy, named after the grandfather he'll never meet. Ethan's making coffee, his hair messy, humming an old tune his father loved. And me? I'm standing by the window, my heart so full it almost hurts. The clock ticks softly, the same one that once marked my loneliest nights, but now each sound feels alive like a heartbeat. Sometimes, life doesn't unfold the way you imagined. Sometimes it takes losing something to understand how love finds its way back. And sometimes, just sometimes, when the world goes quiet long enough, you realize it was never empty at all. It was just waiting for the sound of family again.